for importing Russian oil. In fact, if that was the criteria, then China imports more Russian oil than India, but there is no tariff on them. Europe imports more Russian gas than India. There is no tariff on them. While India has every right to feel genuinely aggrieved, geopolitics is not about being fair or just or the world being a level playing field. It's a big, bad, brutal world out there. And India has to bring its power dynamic, which is a strength of political, military, economic, manufacturing, and technological might to bear on the rest of the world. So the question is, with less than 24 hours to go for the 50% tariffs, and easily, this is the nadir of the India-US relationship, certainly in the last 2 or 3 decades, how can and how should India respond to the Trump tariffs? First up, let's take a look at some of these sectors that are expected to be impacted the most as this 50% American tariffs kick in Wednesday morning. It's going to happen from 9:30 a.m., which is midnight tonight in the United States, midnight of the 27th. The US administration says it is the additional 25% tariffs, which is the penalty for India for its purchase of Russian oil. But it is going to impact across a whole broad range of sectors. Gems and jewelry, for example, it's a vulnerable sector to these increased tariffs. About $10 billion or so worth of polished and refined diamonds and cut gems are sent to the United States. They're going to be badly affected by these increased tariffs. Apparel, textiles, again, very labor intensive. About 30% of all of India's textile exports go into the United States, and that is again going to be impacted as it relies heavily on exports into the US. Shrimp prices, prawns or shrimp, again, a large part of it, more than 50% of shrimp exports go into the US. Anyway, shrimp prices have dropped after the tariff announcement, the reciprocal tariff announcement. Now, with the oil tariffs also kicking in, the prices of shrimp are expected to further decrease. Organic chemicals, that's another sector that faces significant pressure. Carpet exports, leather, footwear, all of these are also set to become much more expensive to export into the United States. Now, around 30% of India's exports to the US, that's valued just a bit under $30 billion, that'll remain duty-free. Remember, India exports over $130 billion to the US. About $30 billion or so far will be outside the remit of these tariffs. So product categories like pharmaceuticals, which up until now, Trump has not brought under the remit of tariffs, but he's threatening to do so, and pretty hefty tariffs. Electronics, semiconductors, smartphones, refined petroleum products, these have been exempt from the Trump tariffs. Also, components, semiconductor chips, mobile phones, and tablets, these are all being shielded for now as well. But in a bid to try and offset the impact of the Trump tariffs, and mind you, it is going to have a pretty big impact, and you will see this starting when markets open tomorrow. Prime Minister Modi was in Gujarat today. He was there to inaugurate one of the Maruti Suzuki factories, a factory from where made in India cars, electric and hybrid cars, will be exported to about a dozen plus countries around the world. Speaking at the inauguration there, Prime Minister Modi today made a further pitch for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, particularly when it comes to the critical minerals mission. Remember, when it comes to rare earths, which are so critical, so important when it comes to the manufacture of semiconductor chips, mobile phones, to jet aircraft, etc. All of that, these rare earth minerals are extremely critical. The Prime Minister said the exploration missions will be at more than 1,200 sites across the country, and it will soon start looking for these critical minerals or rare earths, because currently China controls about 90% of the processing of these rare earths. India too is set to have a large amount of deposits of these rare earths, but so far we've not had a concerted national attempt or a national effort to extract and mine for these rare earths up until now. Let's listen to what the Prime Minister said in Ahmedabad today.
आत्मनिर्भर भारत के अभियान को हम सब आगे बढ़ाएं, वोकल फॉर लोकल बने, स्वदेशी ये हमारा जीवन मंत्र बनना चाहिए दोस्तों। गर्व से स्वदेशी की तरफ चल पड़ो। भारत सरकार ऑटो इंडस्ट्री के लिए रेयर अर्थ मैग्नेट की शॉर्टेज से जुड़ी कठिनाइयों के प्रति भी सजग है। इस दिशा में देश के सामर्थ्य को बढ़ाने के लिए हमने नेशनल क्रिटिकल मिनरल मिशन भी लॉन्च किया है। आज भारत की मेक इन इंडिया इस यात्रा में एक नया अध्याय जुड़ रहा है। आज से भारत में बने इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स 100 देशों को एक्सपोर्ट किए जाएंगे।
So why are these rare earths or rare earth minerals, why are they so critical in our everyday lives? They're crucial for manufacturing smartphones, semiconductors, electric vehicles, even defense equipment, whether it is missile guidance systems, whether it is jet aircrafts. All of these rare earths are absolutely important for the functioning of any of these equipments. It's used in building portable X-ray machines, MRI machines, dental lasers, even genetic testing tools. REEs such as neodymium and praseodymium are essential for permanent magnets, whether it's in the manufacture of electric vehicle engines or even for wind turbines. This, of course, supports India's clean energy objectives. These rare earth minerals are also integral to information technology infrastructure, whether it is optical fiber cables or digital networks, advancing India's digital transformation as well. Developing domestic rare earth elements, particularly the mining and the processing of it, can establish India as an alternative to the global dominance that China has right now. Almost 90% of the rare earths in the world are processed in China. If India were to match China, it would enhance India's own role and its self-sufficiency, and also its important role in the global supply chain shortages that we are currently seeing. All right, so less than 24 hours to go for the Trump tariffs to kick in. How does India respond? Surya Jayanti Evan Pritchard is a senior associate with the Atlantic Council. She's dealt with Russia and Ukraine in the past in her positions in government. Thank you very much, Surya Jayanti, for speaking with us. So the secondary tariffs on Indian oil imports from Russia are set to kick in 24 hours' time from tomorrow. That's Wednesday here in India. India feels it's unfairly targeted because it's not the only country that's importing Russian oil. China imports much more Russian oil than India does, and yet India is the only one that's being slapped with this additional 25% tariff. What do you make of this argument put forth by India and the Indian government that why are we being singled out?
I think it is a fairly self-evident truth that India is simply opting to buy crude oil where it is most economical. And certainly Russian crude at the moment is significantly cheaper than crude coming from a number of other sources. So it's hard to impeach India's logic. It's buying cheap, and it's buying a commodity it needs cheap. However, it is true that the amount of oil that India is buying from Russia has increased from about 3% of Indian consumption before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 to roughly 50% now of India's oil consumption. So we've seen a market increase. It is also thus true that India is helping fund Russia and therefore Russia's prosecution of its war in Ukraine. Whether that is a responsibility of the Indian government is very much a question open for debate. It's a moral question, perhaps a realpolitik question. But the logic on both sides is sound. I think the reason that India specifically has been targeted is because Washington isn't going to get anything out of Beijing, whereas the relationship between India and the United States is sound and is often cooperative. And so it is much easier for Washington to put pressure on India, or so it reasons, than it is to put pressure on China. So I don't think that India is being singled out as much as, unfortunately for India, perhaps it has a good relationship with the United States and is therefore being asked almost as a friend, albeit asked with coercive tariff measures.
But the idea that you can pressurize India with these secondary tariffs in the hope that President Putin of Russia will come to the negotiating table, he'll be more amenable to a peace deal with Ukraine, that doesn't seem to be happening. I think a couple of days ago, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that these are aggressive economic measures that are being undertaken on India to pressure Putin on being more open and more receptive to a dialogue and eventually a peace agreement with Ukraine. So India is basically being punished for the actions of commission and omission of somebody else.
Yes, I think that you have phrased that exactly right. India is being punished because of what Russia is doing. It is true, however, that tariffs are striking most countries from the United States at this point. India is one of many that has been targeted. Indeed, most countries in the world have faced tariff pressure from the United States. It's also true that there's very little logic behind the US tariff effort. And there's very little logic, or at least consistency, underlying the United States' position on Ukraine at the moment. We hear completely competing positions out of the White House just from different members, indeed from different individuals on different days. So on one hand, for example, you have President Trump trying to force Ukraine to give up land in exchange for a peace with Russia. And on the other hand, saying even in the same week that in order to win the war, Kyiv must hit Russia directly in Russian territory, while simultaneously floating the possibility of security guarantees. So I think it's going to be very difficult for any foreign capital to navigate the United States' current position on Ukraine and the degree to which the United States cares to support Ukraine.
Okay.
Honestly, I would suggest, to the extent I would ever be in the position to provide such advice, that one simply wait and see where this goes, because there does seem to be a lot of change and inconsistency in the U.S. position.
So in terms of where it actually goes, this war, where is it headed? Clearly, President Trump wants Presidents Zelensky and Putin to meet quickly and agree to this peace agreement. There are two pillars on which this peace effort rests. One, as you said, whether Ukraine is willing to give up territory and how much of territory it's willing to give up. And two, the security guarantees that America and Europe will sort of backstop for Europe. What are the realistic chances that these two conditions will be met and there will be some kind of peace to end this war?
Honestly, I think close to zero. There are a couple of reasons for that. To start with, although President Trump has hung a great deal of his sense of his own personal success in foreign policy on the ending of wars, and indeed he is currently claiming to have ended 6. I personally see no evidence of any wars that have been ended under his watch, but he really wants to, so that he can claim success, force a peace between Russia and Ukraine. So he is, to some extent, looking for anything that will stick if thrown against the wall, tariffs against India included, to try to force a settlement in the ongoing war. However, President Trump is perhaps overplaying his hand. If he had the leverage to force either Putin or Zelensky to a negotiating table, surely he would have used it by now, and we would have seen at least some kind of bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Unfortunately, Russia has no interest in doing that. And what we have seen consistently, and is always the MO of the Kremlin, is what is generally referred to as the moving of the goalposts. So anytime there is the possibility of a step forward towards a settlement, Russia will announce some kind of new requirement or will attempt to bypass or stall. So for example, after the Alaska summit with President Putin, there were general discussions about bilateral or trilateral peace summits. You will see, of course, that Russia has now committed to nothing. And indeed, recently, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, within the last day or two, announced that Zelensky is not a legitimate party to peace, that because of his own political situation in Ukraine and want of elections during the course of the war, he doesn't have the legitimacy to sign a peace agreement with Russia anyway, and therefore there's no point having a meeting. Okay. So again, Russia will change its mind and delay and stall and obfuscate ad infinitum.
All right, Surya Jayanti, Evan Pritchard, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see how this plays out. As of now, India seems like it's gotten dragged in to a war not of its own making, and a war that's happening thousands of miles away, and it's being punished for the actions of other countries. Tragedy has struck the northern states as multiple cloudbursts have wreaked havoc across Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. In Jammu's Doda district, sudden floods have swept away as many as 10 to 15 houses. 5 lives have been claimed in those flash floods. Several pedestrian bridges have collapsed and residential areas are completely in ruins. Rescue and relief operations are currently underway. The Vaishno Devi pilgrimage has been suspended temporarily because of the relentless rainfall. Roads and train services have been severely disrupted in both of these states. That's Himachal and Jammu and Kashmir. News 18, in fact, gets you these reports from the ground on just how bad the rain situation is in northern India.
मैं अभी तवी के चौथे पुल पे मौजूद हूं, जहां पे तवी का एक हिस्सा, जो पुल का एक हिस्सा है, ये बह चुका है। आप देख सकते हैं एक स्कॉर्पियो गाड़ी है, एक आल्टो गाड़ी है जो बीच में धंस गई है। और आप देख सकते हैं कि भयावह इस वक्त रूप जो है इस वक्त तवी नदी का बना हुआ है। बहुत ही खतरनाक, यहाँ पे बहुत ही संवेदनशील यहाँ पे माहौल बन चुका है, क्योंकि पहले से ही ये एडवाइजरी थी कि अब जो पानी का जल स्तर है वो ज़्यादा बढ़ेगा। पहाड़ों पे लगातार बरसात हो रही थी, वही जब तवी का जलस्तर जिस तरह से बढ़ा है और उससे ये पुल का एक हिस्सा बह चुका है। जम्मू की लाइफ लाइन कहे जाने वाले इस तवी पुल के बह जाने से जगह जगह जाम लग गए हैं। काफ़ी मुश्किलें लोगों को आ रही हैं। एनडीआरएफ, एसडीआरएफ, जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस, पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस के जवान तैनात कर दिए गए हैं। यहाँ पे आम लोगों को कहा गया है कि यहाँ पे आप ना आए, क्योंकि यहाँ पे आना खतरे से खाली नहीं है। लेकिन लोग जो हैं यहाँ पे पहुँच रहे हैं देखने के लिए। लेकिन ऐसे में ये साफ जो है इस वक्त लोगों से आह्वान किया गया है प्रशासन की तरफ से, जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस की तरफ से, कि आप तवी के चौथे पुल पे ना आए। यहाँ पे आना आपके लिए ठीक नहीं होगा, क्योंकि यहाँ पे इलेक्ट्रिक पोल्स भी हैं जो इस वक्त गिरने वाले हैं। और ऐसे में हिदायत यही दी गई है कि आप जो है इस वक्त बच कर रहे। मौसम आने वाले कुछ और घंटों तक ऐसे ही बरसात होती रहेगी और उसके बाद आने वाले 29 अगस्त तक ये इम्कान है कि इसी तरह बरसात होती रहेगी, जिससे कि काफ़ी नुकसान लोगों का हो सकता है। और यही वो पुल है, मेरे विजय दिखाएंगे किस तरह से इस वक्त तवी नदी उफान पे है, नदी नाले उफान पे हैं। ये कहीं ना कहीं ये दिखाता है कि जिस तरह से मौसम की एडवाइजरी दी थी उसी तरह मौसम यहाँ पे दिखाता हुआ कि किस तरह से यहाँ बरसात के चलते तबाही मची हुई है। जम्मू के हर एक इलाके में इस तरह की तबाही का मंजर देखने में आता है। और ये साफ दिखाता है कि कहीं ना कहीं इस वक्त जो निचले इलाके में लोग रहते हैं उनको बहुत ही एहतियात रखना होगा।
हिमाचल प्रदेश की पर्यटन नगरी मनाली में भारी बारिश का दौर लगातार जारी है, जिसके कारण यहाँ पर बहने वाले सभी नदी नाले भी उफान पर। अगर मैं बात करूँ इसमें ब्यास नदी, तो ब्यास नदी भी ने इसमें जो है रौद्र रूप यहाँ पर जो है धारण कर लिया है। फिलहाल मैं तस्वीरों में दिखा, आप देखते हैं कितना भयानक ये मंजर है और आप देखते कितना जलस्तर जो है ब्यास नदी के यहाँ पर जो है बह चुका। और इसके साथ ही आप देखते हैं कि दूसरी तरफ की तस्वीरें भी मैं आपको दिखा, आप देखते हैं कि दूसरी तरफ की जो तस्वीरें हैं ये मनाली चंडीगढ़ नेशनल हाईवे की है, जो पूरी तरह से यहाँ पर जो है क्षतिग्रस्त यहाँ पर हो चुका है, क्योंकि ब्यास नदी में जलस्तर बढ़ने के कारण जो है ये मार्ग जो है वो पूरी तरह से कई मनाली से कुल्लू के मध्य कई स्थानों पर यहाँ पर जो है बाधित हुआ है। और इसके साथ ही आप दूसरी तरफ की तस्वीर देखें, दूसरी तरफ जो है ब्यास नदी यहाँ पर बह रही है। इस ब्यास नदी में जिस तरह जो है देर रात को भारी बारिश हुई उससे काफी ज्यादा पानी का जलस्तर यहाँ पर जो है बढ़ चुका और इसके कारण कई दुकानें यहाँ पर जो इस ब्यास नदी की भेंट चढ़ चुका। और इसके साथ ही मनाली में 2 के करीब जो 2 रेस्टोरेंट वो भी यहाँ पर जो है क्षतिग्रस्त हुए हैं और उसके साथ ही कुछ मकान और कुछ वाहन भी जो ब्यास नदी में यहाँ पर जो बह चुके हैं। हालांकि बारिश मनाली के ऊपरी क्षेत्रों में लगातार जारी है और ऐसे में पानी का जलस्तर जो है वो काफी ज्यादा यहाँ पर जो बढ़ता हुआ नजर आ रहा है। इसके साथ ही अगर बात करूं तो जिस तरह देखिए घाटी में अभी जो है सेब की फसल यहाँ पर जो है उसका सीजन यहाँ पर जो चला हुआ है, लेकिन जिस तरह जो घाटी में बारिश हुई है इससे ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों के भी काफी सारे जो सड़क मार्ग है वो यहाँ पर जो बाधित हुए हैं। और ऐसे में अब किसान बागवानों को भी अपनी फसलों को खेतों तक पहुंचाने का यहाँ पर जो है चिंता सताने लगी है। लेकिन इससे बड़ी दिक्कत यह है कि जिस तरह जो घाटी में जो बारिश हो रही है उससे जो है काफी ज्यादा नुकसान यहाँ पर जो होता हुआ नजर आ रहा है।
The temple town of Dharmasthala in Karnataka is embroiled in a huge controversy after a former sanitation worker, C.N. Chinnaiya, walked into a police station over 2 months ago. He claimed that he was forced to bury and cremate the bodies of around 100 women and minors between the 1990s and the mid-2010s. A special investigation team was formed. Ground-penetrating radar was used. He was taken on dozens of recce's and sorties and so on. But no evidence was found to substantiate the claims made by this whistleblower, alleged whistleblower. That led to the arrest of this man. Now, C.N. Chinnaiya is in police custody. His family is alleging that there is a larger conspiracy. In fact, his wife has spoken to the press and she has said that her husband is being influenced and that this entire thing is a conspiracy against the Hindu believers there who throng the Dharmasthala temple. Also, separately, there are raids that were conducted today by the SIT and others against Shetty and Girish Matanwar, who are also allegedly involved in this larger conspiracy. Is it possible that Mahesh Shetty and Girish Matanwar were the ones who set up this Chinnaya in order to try and defame not just the Hindu followers there, but also the Hegde family, which are the custodians of the Dharmasthala Temple Trust? But I want to first play out some reactions. This has become a huge political story in Karnataka. First, some reactions, and then we'll go across to our political face-off.
ಅದೇ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಯ್ತಿನಂತೆ ಹೋದವರು ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತೆ 2 ತಿಂಗಳಾಯಿತು ಅವ್ರ ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಆದರೆ ಟಿವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ನಾನು ಏತಕ್ಕೆ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದದ ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಆದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಏನಾದರೂ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ತುಂಬ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯವರು ಸರ್ ಅವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆನೂ ಅವರು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯವರಂತೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಸರ್ ಒಂದು ಜಗಳಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಎದಕ್ಕೂ ಹೋಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಕುಡಿಯೋದು ಬೀಡಿ ಕುಡಿಯೋದು ಏನು ಕೂಡ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್
ಯಾರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಹುಡುಗ ಅಣ್ಣ ಈ ತರ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮಣ್ಣ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅನುಮಾನ ಇದೆ ಯಾರಂತ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮ ಈ ತರ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೂ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋದನಲ್ಲ ಯಾವತ್ತು ಯಾರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತದೆ ಯಾರಂತ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತ ನನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೇನೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗೋದು ನನಗೇನು ಗೊತ್ತೈತೆ.
This masked former sanitation worker Chinnaya, he had alleged mass burials of women and minors at the temple premises and the surrounding areas. But most of the excavation sites, and it had been taken by the SIT on a number of occasions over the last month and a half, they managed to find just one skeletal remains, and that too, we're given to understand, is of a recent suicide victim, not something, as he alleged, from the 90s or the early 2000s. The whistleblower produced one skull to back his claims. It turns out that skull too was fake. It was over 40 years old. It was varnished. A woman then named Sujata Bhatt, she backed the allegation of this whistleblower. She said that her daughter had gone missing in Dharmasthala many years ago. And then a few days ago, she backtracked on her claim. In fact, some are even saying she does not even have a daughter. Forget about the daughter being lost in Dharmasthala. The complainant said that he was a temple worker. He was devoted to the welfare of the temple. But in reality, he had not been living in the temple town for over a decade. Institutional suppression of the allegations was alleged from many quarters, but when the special investigation team was formed by the state, it was backed publicly by the temple authorities to investigate fully and get to the bottom of this matter.
राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री सिद्धरामैया जी भगवान के ऊपर कितना विश्वास रखते हैं वो जानकारी मुझे नहीं है, लेकिन मुख्यमंत्री जी धर्मस्थल मामले में जो कंप्लेनेंट बयान देते हैं वो कंप्लेनेंट का बैकग्राउंड क्या है इसके बारे में कभी शायद चिंता नहीं किया है.
ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಮಟ್ಟಣ್ಣ ಯಾರು, ಯಾವ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ? ತಿಮ್ಮಾರೋಡಿ ಯಾವ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ? ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಮಟ್ಟಣ್ಣ ಯಾವ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ ಹೇಳಿ? ಆರ್ ಅಶೋಕರ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಮಟ್ಟಣ್ಣನ ತಿಮ್ಮಾರೋಡಿನ ಬೇಕಂತ ಒಂದು BJP ಪಾರ್ಟ್ 2 ಆ ಕಡೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಜನರಿಗೆ ದಿಕ್ಕು ತಪ್ಪಿಸೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಕ್ತಾರೆ. ತಮ್ಮ ಬ್ಯಾಳೆ ಬೇಯಬೇಕು ಅವರು.
All right, I want to go across to Arvind Bellad. He's Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the Karnataka Assembly, BJP MLA. We'll also be joined by Sanket Yanagi, advocate who has his sympathies with the Congress. Mr. Bellad, so the SIT now is saying that this whole thing was pinned on Mahesh Shetty and Girish Matanwar, and they were possibly the ones who put up this Chinnaya to do what he did, and that these two, Mahesh Shetty and Girish Matanwar, the SIT and the state government are saying, have previous BJP and RSS connections. How would you respond to that?
See, Congress government, by forming this SIT, they thought they can tarnish the image of Dharmasthala and Sri Virendra Hegdeji. They thought they can damage the faith what people have on Dharmasthala and Sri Manjunatheshwara. But unfortunately, the SIT turned out to be a boomerang for Congress. All the complaints turned out to be a big fake. So it has become a big embarrassment for Congress. Now they are trying to find different ways and means of getting out of the situation. One side they are telling that SIT, it was good, it was formed and the truth has come out. Second time they are telling ki no, we had to constitute because of the pressure from Mahesh Shetty or Mr. Girish Mattanawar. But my question is, in our assembly also, so many times we pressurize the government for NIA or a special SIT or a special investigation, so many times on so many much bigger issues. Some unknown guy comes and gives a complaint without verifying his background. They form an SIT. This clearly shows the intentions of Congress government. This is completely led by leftists and people within the Congress who are completely against the Hindu beliefs and Hindu ideologies. This itself is said by Mr. Dinesh Kundra, who is the district in charge minister. He said that we had to form SIT because of the pressure from leftists. He said that though I was confident of getting the investigation done by local police, we had to form SIT because of the leftist pressure. This is said by a district in charge minister also.
But you know, it is also turning out to be a case of some kind of financial dispute, property dispute between this Mahesh Shetty and the Hegde family, which controls the temple trust. Even the lady, Bhatt, who had come out and said her daughter was abducted and her daughter was killed, she was also allegedly in some kind of financial dispute, property dispute with the Dharmasthala temple trust and the Hegde family. Why is a financial misdoing or a financial wrongdoing now being given? And the BJP is saying that there is a larger conspiracy to malign the faith, it's deliberate targeting of Hindus, etc. But the state government and the SIT are saying that the root of this is a proximate fight for property or some kind of financial dispute between these individuals and the temple trust and the family that manages the temple trust.
Why are they telling this now? Why didn't they do this due diligence or the investigation when the complaint originally that Chennaiya guy came and gave this complaint? They should have inquired about him. They should have inquired his background. They should have actually conducted a proper preliminary inquiry before forming an SIT. They thought that they can use this opportunity to malign Dharmasthala and Hindu beliefs. Now when it has boomerang, now they are trying to tell that this is because of some kind of property dispute or money dispute. And these are the things now they are telling. Why couldn't they do it at the initial stage?
So,
and there was no need for them to do SIT and day in and day out, they went and did all the digging. Dharmasthala name was tarnished. All over India and all across, even Al Jazeera and BBC covered this issue and said that thousands of women and dead bodies are buried there. And they tried to completely destabilize the Hindu beliefs.
Let me ask Sanket Yanagi. So Sanket Yanagi, for the last month and a half, for various days, the entire state was watching this spectacle of the SIT leading this masked man, Mr. X. Now he's been identified as Mr. Chinnaiya. They took him to over a dozen so-called burial places. The SIT found only one place where there were some remains of human bones and fragments, and even that turned out to be a much older body and not something that happened recently, or at least in the time frame that he said. This entire exercise went on for a good month and a half, and then finally now the person himself, the so-called whistleblower, has been arrested and his own credentials are dubious, Sanket Yanagi. So the whole point is BJP is saying that this whole thing was orchestrated by the state government, by the SIT, just to malign the Hegde family that controls the temple in Dharmasthala and to malign larger Hindu faith.
First, let us understand the chronology of events. On 22nd of June 2025, two Bangalore-based lawyers, Mr. Ojasvi Gowda and Sachin Deshpande, have issued a press statement that former sanitation worker from Dharmasthala was willing to identify grave sites and assist in uncovering the alleged crimes. And on 27th of June 2025, a delegation of lawyers, they are all responsible people in the society because they are professionals. the delegation of lawyers approached Dakshina Kannada Superintendent of Police to formally request for an inquiry into the claims of mass burials. They did not believe it. They wanted the probe. And 3rd of July 2025, that former sanitation worker, Chinnaya, whose identity was protected, submitted a formal written complaint to the Superintendent of Police. He alleged that he had been forced to bury bodies, so on and so forth. He mentioned about some cognizable offences which is serious in nature. And on 4th of July 2025, based on his complaint, Dharmasthala police have registered a FIR under section 211A of the Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Samhita. That's a cognizable offence. 10th of July 2025, whistleblower was granted protection under the Witness Protection Act of the scheme. On 11th of July 2025, complainant appeared before Beltangadi court to record his statement and submitted skeletal remains and claimed to have exhumed from one of the burial sites. So now, 14th of July, the chairperson of the State Women's Commission wrote a letter to the Chief Minister for constitution of the Special Investigating Team. And on 19th, that's after 5 days, the government officially constituted the SIT probe. And the SIT took over 1 minute.
No, Mr. Yanagi. No, one second. If the state felt genuinely that there was a problem, there were these mass burials. First of all, do you not verify the credentials of this whistleblower? After a month now, the same SIT has gone and arrested this whistleblower. They took him on this, jolly ride. One second. They took him on this jolly ride for a whole month so 10, 12 different places, and he was not able to corroborate any of what he said with, actual human remains or bones or anything. And now you have suspected his own motives and saying that, maybe he was involved in a conspiracy, maybe Mahesh Shetty put him up to it, maybe Girish Matanwar put him up to it, and now the very person on whom this SIT was formed and whose allegations this SIT was formed to probe has arrested and is saying that this guy is a fraud. Why would anybody take that SIT seriously?
So under the Criminal Procedure Code,
Call him whistleblower, don't give him a big name. He's a mudslinger. He is a guy who has taken money from his Christian organization, leftist organization, and trying to do it. Don't give him a big name like whistleblower.
So, okay, Yanagi, yes.
First of all, under the CRPC provisions, where an investigation officer takes charge of an investigation of a matter or a crime or an offence, it is up to him as to how to investigate. Neither the court can direct him, nor including the superior courts like constitutional courts like High Court or the Supreme Court, do not have any jurisdiction to direct him as to how to investigate. They can only monitor as to investigation is properly being conducted or not.
Who constituted the special investigation team?
But they are reportable to the magistrate, not to the government. Please understand. The inquiry which was supposed to be conducted by the jurisdictional police, that's Beltangadi police, that was entrusted to the SIT. SIT is not reportable to the government. SIT's investigation report in the form of a final report needs to be submitted to the court. It is no way, the government has no hold.
Siddaramaia's government constituted the SIT, right? The Karnataka state government constituted
the SIT. Please understand, this SIT has been constituted in replacement of the jurisdictional police's inquiry or investigation into the matter, in relation to a particular crime number.
Who constituted the SIT? Are you saying state government had no role in constituting the SIT?
After the constitution, the government has no role to play. The submit,
This was a state government ordered and constituted special investigation team. Mr. Yanagi,
let
come
us
on.
not misread the law.
You can make the case, okay, the investigation got derailed. You can make the case that SIT should not have trusted this former sanitation worker. All those arguments are taken. But to say that state government had nothing to do with SIT, that is, come on, that is hogwash, and you know it.
Let us not misread the law. Once the SIT is constituted in replacement of the investigation team by the jurisdictional police, it would perform the role which is required to perform by a jurisdictional police. In other way, the jurisdictional police who are required to investigate and file a report to the court, that would be done by the SIT.
Okay.
But SIT do not have any role to be played by the government as
Okay.
to whom to investigate, why to investigate, when,
Mr.
in what way.
Ballard, the accusation against the BJP is also that BJP was silent on this issue up until a few days ago, till just before when this man was arrested, this Chinnaya was arrested. Even before that, even someone like D.K. Shivkumar, who's a Congress Deputy Chief Minister, said that this seems like hurting at religious sensitivities rather than an issue of law enforcement. So even after D.K. Shivkumar said something like that, it's only after that BJP actually came and picked up this issue. That's the charge against you and your party.
No, this is a completely false news spreading by Congress. Much before the SIT was formed, when I heard the news that SIT is being formed, I gave a press statement. I came on the TV and condemned this thought. Then when the SIT was formed, our leader of the opposition, Mr. Ashok, conducted 1 hour press conference in Mysore and condemned the formation of SIT. On the next day again, he conducted 1 more press meet in Bangalore and condemned the whole issue. This is completely wrong information spreading by Congress. And Mr. D.K. Shivkumar himself on the floor of the House said he feels there is some conspiracy behind the whole thing.
So now Mr. Sanket is saying it has nothing to do with state government. He's saying SIT has nothing to do with state government, investigation has nothing to do with state government.
It's all well known to everyone that the SIT is formed, the SIT officers work under the direction of state government only, because they are all state government officers. Though they have to give the report to court, but ultimately they work under state government.
Okay.
So this is all a conspiracy by Congress and leftists and some Christian organizations.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Arvind Ballard, Sanket Yanagi, thank you very much for joining us. So clearly now it seems like this whole case has been turned on its head, and now the person who allegedly came forth and was called as Mr. X or whistleblower, he himself has been arrested, and he is the object of suspicion as far as the Karnataka SIT is concerned. And now they are trying to find out who the other players were who possibly could have set him up to do this, including the likes of the names of Mahesh Shetty and Girish Matanwar have come forth. Raids have been conducted at their premises today. I want to now move on to some international stories. Israel has carried out back-to-back airstrikes on the Al-Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis on Monday. It was the 2 explosions happened within a matter of minutes. The double-tap hits, as they're called, killed journalists, at least 5 of them in the process of these two hits. It's not just journalists, there were health workers, medical relief workers, emergency response crews who were all killed in that process. About 20 people died, including 5 journalists. These journalists worked for various media organizations and agencies like the Associated Press, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. Several of these people were killed. These were people who were uninvolved as far as the war in Gaza between Hamas and Israel was concerned. Now Israel is facing fierce condemnation both domestically and internationally, so much so both the Israeli military and the Prime Minister's office had to issue a statement of apology. What happens next? I dig a little deeper. Four Palestinian journalists had been killed on the spot. A 5th one died later of his wounds in a deadly attack that happened in Gaza's second largest city of Khan Yunis. At least 15 more people were killed, including members of the medical staff, rescue workers, and patients, the data of which was given out by the Gazan Health Ministry. In total, 20 people died in the attack that happened on the Al-Nasser hospital right in the heart of Khan Yunis. An attack which Israel has said was inadvertent and has issued an apology for the same. The Israeli military, though, did not give any immediate explanation as to why it attacked this hospital and who the targets were. It was one of the deadliest as far as members of the press are concerned. Remember, journalists have already died in unusually high numbers covering this war. The 5 journalists had worked for different news outlets, including Reuters, the Associated Press, and Al Jazeera. News outlets which employed these journalists identified them by their names: Hussein Al-Masri, Mohammed Salama, Mariam Daga, Moaz Abu Taha, and Ahmed Abu Aziz. The Israeli military acknowledged carrying out this strike in the Al-Nasser hospital without exactly saying who or what the target was. In a statement, the Israeli military said that it regretted any harm to uninvolved individuals. It also said that the Israeli military's chief of staff has ordered an immediate inquiry. The office of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who generally refrains from commenting on civilian deaths or says that civilian deaths are simply an inevitable and unavoidable part of war, he put out a statement suggesting that the killings at the Nasser hospital were the result of a military blunder. But these rare expressions of regret did very little to assuage the growing swell of local and international outrage against Israel. Even before Monday and the attack that happened at the Nasser hospital, the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas has been one of the deadliest conflicts for journalists. Almost 200 journalists have been killed since the fighting began, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. The Israeli government has barred international journalists from entering Gaza to report on the war freely. That has left much of the world to rely on local Palestinian journalists who are reporting amidst all the bombardment to try and understand what is the situation unfolding in the Gaza Strip. The killing of journalists in Gaza should shock the world, not into stunned silence, but into action demanding accountability and justice. That was the word from the spokesperson for the United Nations Human Rights Office. In a joint letter sent by both the Associated Press and Reuters to the Israeli government, both the agencies said that they had found the Israeli military's willingness and ability to investigate past incidents involving journalists to rarely result in any form of decisive action. The circumstances of the attack in the southern city of Khan Yunis were not immediately clear, and the military did not specify if the strikes had been carried out by missiles or tank fire or through drones. Israel's conduct in the war has prompted international censure of the rising civilian death toll, as well as the massive Israeli restrictions on the distribution of aid inside Gaza. Parts of Gaza are now officially experiencing famine, according to a global group of experts backed by the United Nations. More than 60,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. The tally there does not distinguish between combatants and civilians, but that 60,000 includes about 18,000 children. The Hamas-led attack on Israel on the 7th of October 2023, which started this war, had killed around 1,200 Israelis, with about 250 being taken as hostages to Gaza. Around 50 out of those 250 are still unaccounted for and are believed to be kept as hostage by Hamas after almost 2 years of this war. Back in Khan Yunis, after the first blast, a live video feed showed emergency responders and others moving around white body bags across an exterior staircase. Shortly after that, just moments after that, there was a second strike on that same hospital, and that too was captured live on camera. Another graphic video which was shared on social media, it shows about a dozen bodies covered in dust and blood piled along a staircase inside the hospital premises. The Israeli Prime Minister issued a rare statement of regret after Monday's killings. But what Netanyahu called a tragic mishap is the inevitable byproduct of stringing out this war in Gaza so that he can stay on in power. The Israeli opposition and critics of Netanyahu's government, including the hostages' families, have reprimanded him and have been very critical of him these past few months for A, not being able to end the war, and B, not being able to bring back the hostages. But for Netanyahu to continue to stay on in power, he needs the support of the far-right parties and far-right ministers, the likes of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, both of whom are engaged in an effort to flood the West Bank with as many Jewish settlers as they possibly can. The idea there being it will prevent the roots of any Palestinian state from emerging in the West Bank. Smotrich, in fact, has gone one step further. He's encouraging actively the eviction of Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza. That would pave the way for Israel to be able to absorb both. The aim is very clear that there is not going to be any question of a two-state solution. But here's the problem. Israel has already devastated Hamas as a military force. It has killed virtually all of Hamas's top commanders, from Yahya Sinwar to Mohammed Deif. So now, to justify continuing the war effort, it must go after lower-level commanders. And these lower-level commanders are usually living and hiding among civilians. And that means the collateral damage is much, much higher. And that's why Israel is the object of much of international censure. But it's not like Hamas has been entirely above board either. Hamas's leadership could have ended all of this suffering by agreeing to give up power in Gaza and also by releasing all the hostages. But by perpetuating this war, Hamas is also engaged in its own heinous crimes. It has murdered Israeli hostages, it has killed its own people in Gaza, thousands of them, in order to cling on to power. And all this political and military power games that is going on, this vicious power tussle between Israel on the one side and Hamas on the other, caught in this crossfire, Gaza continues to bleed every single day. In what's being seen as a major escalation and a step towards a possible full-blown military conflict, the United States has deployed at least 3 warships off the coast of Venezuela. The Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has condemned this deployment. He's called it illegal. He says this is a blatant attempt to change the regime there. So why are the two countries, America and Venezuela, on a war path? Again, I try to find out a little more. The Trump administration is aggressively stoking tensions with Venezuela and its president, Nicolas Maduro. It's leading to a situation which appears to be creating the conditions that could lead to a military confrontation between America and Venezuela. A major buildup of US naval forces is currently underway outside Venezuela's waters as the Trump administration has stepped up its belligerent rhetoric about fighting drug cartels. It's also labeled Maduro a terrorist cartel leader. All that raises the question of whether the end goal of this is just to counter drug smuggling or potentially change the Venezuelan regime. The United States had a long-running feud and tried multiple times, unsuccessfully at that, to remove Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Now, will they be successful with Nicolas Maduro?
Okay, we'll sign right here, right? Sure.
President Trump signed a secret directive last month instructing the Pentagon to use military force against some Latin American drug cartels. His administration has labeled some of these as terrorist organizations. Around the same time, the administration declared a Venezuelan criminal group, the Cartel de los Soles, or the Cartel of the Suns, was a terrorist organization and that Nicolas Maduro was its leader. It has called Maduro's government in Venezuela illegitimate. The United States backed the main opposition candidate, Maria Corina Machado, in the run-up to the last elections against Maduro, but she was barred from contesting after being targeted in a politically motivated case. Eventually, Maduro won in a landslide, and Machado continues to be in hiding in Venezuela. Since the last few weeks, the Pentagon has moved US naval assets, including warships, into the southern Caribbean Sea. In response, Maduro announced last week that he was deploying more than 4.5 million militiamen around his country. He vowed to defend our seas, our skies, and our lands from any incursion. He also urged Venezuelans to actively enroll and join the military. Last week, the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt was asked about the American ship movements into the Caribbean Sea and whether President Trump was considering putting forces on the ground in Venezuela. This is what she had to say.
President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country.
US officials say that up to 3 guided missile destroyers would soon be arriving in the region. The naval warships will be targeting boats operated by drug cartels transporting fentanyl to the United States. Also headed to the region are the 2 Iwo Jima amphibious ready groups, which includes the USS San Antonio, the USS Iwo Jima, and the USS Fort Lauderdale. In all, they carry about 4,500 sailors and about 2,200 Marines. They're expected to head out to sea soon and are likely to arrive off the coast of Venezuela in the next several days. Several P-8 surveillance aircraft and also submarines are deployed to the region. The destroyers that are headed towards the zone outside Venezuelan territorial waters are the USS Jason Dunham and the USS Gravely. both warships which recently featured in the campaign against the Houthis in the Red Sea. These destroyers are equipped with more than 100 missiles, including surface-to-air missiles. They can conduct anti-aircraft and anti-submarine warfare and even shoot down ballistic missiles. Deploying these destroyers against these drug cartels would be like bringing a howitzer gun into a knife fight. The US Navy has long intercepted and boarded ships that are suspected of smuggling drugs in international waters. Typically, those operations are headed by a Coast Guard officer, with the Navy playing second fiddle. But the scale of the forces that the Pentagon is now moving into place, coupled with Trump's order, suggests that the administration is contemplating going significantly beyond law enforcement. In fact, recent developments also invite comparisons to the provocative conditions that preceded two important American military episodes in the second half of the 20th century. The first was in the Gulf of Tonkin, where aggressive US naval activity off the coast of North Vietnam led to a confrontation that eventually dragged America to get directly involved in the Vietnam War. That war went on for over a decade, and eventually America had to retreat. It had to withdraw unsuccessfully after the fall of Saigon. In the second incident, which was in December of 1989, then President George H.W. Bush sent more than 20,000 American troops to invade Panama and arrested strongman leader Manuel Noriega. Noriega was convicted of drug charges and spent a considerable amount of time in jail. As per US law, the administration should technically go to the US Congress for authorization if it wants to use military force against any foreign country, in this case, Venezuela. While there are plenty of examples of previous presidents not asking for authorization from Congress, the most notable one was George W. Bush before invading Iraq in 2003. But here's the nub of the problem. The Trump administration has contradictory goals with Venezuela. On the one hand is its desire to use military force against drug cartels and to get Nicolas Maduro out of power, but that's in direct contradiction to its desire to persuade Maduro to cooperate in taking back more and more deported Venezuelan immigrants. Earlier this month, the administration announced that the government was doubling a reward to $50 million for any information that leads to Nicolas Maduro's capture and prosecution. Right now, though, he's unlikely to be caught by American forces anytime soon. Thanks for watching Brass Tacks from CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions.
Co-presented. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Enforcement Directorate heat on Aam Aadmi Party leader Saurabh Bhardwaj in Delhi hospital construction scam. Around a dozen locations, including the Bhardwaj residence, is being searched by the officials. And now Aam Aadmi Party's Atishi has slammed the BJP, says, and I quote, why was a raid conducted at Saurabh Bhardwaj's place today? Because questions are being raised on Prime Minister Modi's degree across the country. That's the question she's asked. The raid was conducted, she says, to divert the attention from this discussion. At the time when the case is being reported, Saurabh Bhardwaj was not even a minister, which means that the entire case is false and fabricated. That is the comment that's come in from Aam Aadmi Party's Atishi, as raids currently underway at Saurabh Bhardwaj's, or premises linked to Saurabh Bhardwaj, his official residence, currently being searched by the ED officials, and this in the Delhi hospital construction scam. Arunima joins us with more details. Arunima, tell us more about the raids. Before we talk about the politics of it, how many locations are we talking about? Since how long? What's the latest?
13 locations, including Saurabh Bhardwaj's residence and hospital premises. So these are, hospitals which were supposed to be constructed, or the ICU was to be updated. And the contractors who were given these contracts, their premises are also being raided. Essentially, the case pertains to when Saurabh Bhardwaj was still a minister. The case pertains to an anti-corruption branch of Delhi flagging off that how more than 5,000 crores were sanctioned for upgradation of ICU or construction of new wings in hospitals. And even after the timeline that was given for this construction was about 6 months. But even after 3 years, there was hardly any movement seen on the ground. And the funds continued to be utilized. So if there was no construction actually happening, where were the funds going? That was the question that ACB asked. And they came to the conclusion that this was a financial embezzlement. Now, ED has got into this case because ED failed. Not only was this money ill-gotten wealth, money given as bribe, but it was also laundered away. So Bhardwaj and the contractors as well as hospitals are getting searched at the moment to look for documentary evidence or evidence of digital nature to prove this premise on which ED has registered an ECIR.
I don't know, a very interesting comment coming in from Aam Aadmi Party's Atishi, the former Chief Minister of Delhi, says the searches have been carried out to divert the attention from the discussion about the Prime Minister's educational degree, so on and so forth. But she's also spoken of the fact that Saurabh Bhardwaj back then was not even a minister, which means the entire case is false and fabricated. Keeping this version in account, can you lay emphasis on why is it that we're seeing his name in this entire controversy and the searches currently on?
If you look at the Enforcement Directorate, what they've said is that this was an FIR that was registered on 26th of June 2025, and the ACB case has also been cited by the Enforcement Directorate. Essentially, two people were under scanner, Satyendra Garg and Saurabh Bhardwaj. And the charge is that there was a, continuance corruption. So when Mr. Garg was the minister in charge, that is when this alleged corruption began, and it was subsequently pushed forward when Saurabh Bhardwaj became a minister as well. The charge is that together and this we have heard earlier also in the liquor policy scam, that they were floating in tenders, making changes to policies and securing money which was then diverted to the party fund. That charge we have heard in liquor policy also. Similar premise is what ED is working on in this case too.
Thank you, Arnava, for joining us with all those details. Going across to Anshul Singh, who joins us with more. Anshul, give us a sense of the ED searches. This goes back to the Delhi hospital scam. ED searching 13 locations, including the residence of Delhi Minister Saurabh Bhardwaj. All of this linked to a money laundering investigation, to alleged irregularities in hospital construction projects sanctioned during the Aam Aadmi Party government's tenure. Arnava broke down some of the details of the case so far. Tell us a little bit about the searches now.
Well, yes, first to talk about the entire case and the exact details of the case. The basic allegation that has been put forth against the Aam Aadmi Party in this entire matter is that yes, there were orders given of building in new rooms and also new buildings for hospitals out here in the national capital. For that purposes, tenders were floated. In fact, the kind of equipment that was eventually taken out of tenders and was taken at a much higher price than what was actually notified from the side of the Delhi government. Now, this complaint that was given initially was given by Vijendra Gupta, who was the then BJP president, and he went ahead and gave this initial complaint to the Anti-Corruption Bureau of Delhi many years ago, approximately in 2017-2018 itself, and then the ACB went ahead and filed an official FIR in the month of February, right before the elections out here in the national capital. Now, taking this as the base of the case, the Enforcement Directorate has also gone ahead and registered a money laundering case into this entire matter, and they have started this entire investigation. Now, at this point in time, as we are speaking, Saurabh Bhardwaj, who was the former health minister of the national capital, is also under the lens, because the Enforcement Directorate and the ACB also believes that it was that Saurabh Bhardwaj also knew that the tenders that have been floated and the money that has been earned by the Aam Aadmi.
CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions.
We're live, viewers, from the CNN News 18 Primetime Studios, brought to you by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions. Viewers, Gandhis are God. Karnataka Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivakumar's proclamation has renewed debate on whether the Congress party is truly the exemplar of inner party democracy that its scion Rahul Gandhi claims it is, in sharp contrast to the Bharatiya Janata Party. D.K. Shivkumar's declaration wouldn't have been half as bad had it not been preceded by a grovelling apology. An apology issued for crossing the Congress scion Rahul Gandhi's metaphorical Lakshman Rekha by singing the RSS anthem on the floor of the Karnataka Assembly. Sample this. This is what has irked the Congress High Command, viewers. Listen in.
Namaste sada vatsale matrabhumi Adhyakshaya Hindu bhumi sugam varditoham Mahamangale.
The fact that DK